Good to go now.
Okay. It's 6:30. My name is Scott Sterling, and I'm the chairman of the Hubbard Plan Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and if you would stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, the next piece of business is to swear in our new commission, Patrick Marnell. Sorry.
No worries.
And I'll have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Patrick Marnell,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
perform the duties of planning commissioner
perform the duties of planning commissioner
and support the Constitution
and support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of the state of Oregon.
and of the state of Oregon.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Now, good evening. My name is Scott Sterling. I'm the chair of the Hubbard Planning Commission. I will be presiding over this hearing. This is the time and place set for the continued public hearing in the matter of Bear Creek Plan Unit Development, file PUD 2022-01. The hearing is now open and it is 6:33. The planning commission, the city planner has a special update for the planning commission on this file. Holly?
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. For the record, my name is Holly Byram and I work at the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. And my role is as contract city planner to help the Planning Commission understand the standards and criteria that apply to land use applications submitted to the city of Hubbard. And so for this planned unit development file, PUD 2022-01, last month, the Planning Commission held a continued public hearing for this file. On that date, it was September 20th. You heard a lengthy staff report about the standards that apply to that application. You heard a presentation from the applicant. You heard quite a bit of public testimony on that file, and then the applicant was able to give a rebuttal. At the end of the night, staff's recommendation, consistent with the applicant's request, was to continue that public hearing to allow them more time to address some of the recommended conditions of approval. Since that time, the applicant has reached out to staff and they are requesting additional time to respond to those conditions and also to the public testimony that was received on that evening. There's also been a little bit of change on the team itself. The developer Icon Construction is leaving the project and the property owner is continuing on with the current application. So those parties are in the process of signing an agreement. Both signed the original application. The applicant has signed a waiver to the 120-day time clock for land use application decisions. And so at this point, the property owner is getting up to speed. They want to continue with the current application, and they are requesting a little more time to respond to all the different details. So at the bottom of the one-page staff memo in your packet, you'll see a recommended motion to continue this public hearing to the regular meeting of January, which is January 17th, 2023, and that's at 6:30 p.m. So that's the motion that staff is recommending this evening.
Do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll motion to continue the public hearing for Bear Creek PUD, City File PUD 2022 -01 to date and time certain of January 17th, 2023.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. And do we, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Hearing none. That's unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have, we have the, I'm trying to, sorry. Just lost my. Okay. Sorry, we have a major variance. So good evening. My name is Scott Sterling and I'm the chair of the Hubbard Planning Commission. And we'll be presiding over this hearing. This is the time and place set for the public hearing in the matter of major variance file VAR 2022-02 for address 3735 5th Street in Hubbard. The hearing is now open and it is 6:38. Oregon land use law requires several items to be read at the beginning of every public hearing. The city planner will review the materials, and your patience is appreciated as she goes through these statements. City planner Holly Barton.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
The applicable substantive criteria upon which this case will be decided are found in the Hubbard Development Code, Section 2.101, which is the R1 Low Density Residential District, Section 3.104, variances, and Section 3.110, non-conforming uses and structures. All testimony and evidence received during this public hearing must be directed toward these approval criteria or to such other rule, law, regulation, or policy which you believe to apply to this case. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the City Council or the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record at or following the final evidentiary hearing on this case. Such issues shall be raised with and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford this body and the parties to this hearing an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. The public hearing will proceed with the staff report and any other comments from governmental agencies that are in attendance, followed by the applicant and all of those who are in support of the application. All of those opposed to the application will then be allowed to speak, followed by those with general comments who are neither for nor against the application. Finally, the applicant will be entitled to a rebuttal period. Please state your name, physical address, and mailing address clearly for the record before your comments. Please try to avoid repetition if someone else has already expressed the same thoughts. It's perfectly all right to state that you agree with the statements of that previous speaker. Please be assured that everyone will have an opportunity to speak. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by this body, they must be formally placed in the record of this proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, please submit the material to Vicki Noggle, who will make sure your evidence is properly taken care of. Prior to the conclusion of the first evidentiary hearing on a land use application, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, it will be up to this body to determine if the hearing will be continued to a time and date certain, or if the record will be kept open for the submission of additional evidence.
With that out of the way, I need to ask the audience and fellow commissioners a few questions. Does any member of the audience have any objections to the notice that was provided? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the planning commission to hear this matter? Does any member of the planning commission wish to declare a partial or actual conflict of interest or bias? Does any member of the planning commission wish to report any site visits or expert take contact?
I did drive by the property. I know that.
Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the impartiality or expert disclosure of any member of the planning commission? City Planner Holly Byram, please give your staff report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. For the record, Holly Byram, Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. This is a land use application for a major variance. The applicant lives at 3735 Fifth Street. And what they are requesting is essentially to restore a historic garage structure on their property. And that would require a major variance to the street side setback of the R1 zone. So I'll get into the details here. Major variance is a type 2 application, which means that the Planning Commission holds a public hearing and then makes the final decision this evening. So included in the packet is a staff report. On page 2 of that staff report is a vicinity map. The subject property is located at the intersection of 5th and C. And the house that's there is a single family dwelling. It has one existing driveway, and then it has this historic garage pad that's paved with no current driveway to it. And those are both accessed off of the C Street side. On page 3 of the staff report, there's a picture of what the current concrete pad and half walls look like. What the applicant is proposing to do is to use that existing footprint, the pad, the concrete walls, and simply extend the walls up and cover it with a roof. And then the issue with this that he's facing is that in the R1 zone, a garage accessing a street has to be set back 20 feet. And this historic garage would only be set back 5 feet 4 inches. And so we'll get into that in just a moment here. On page 4 of the staff report are the elevations, so you can see what the structure will look like once it's enclosed. So as I explained, the major variance is requesting to reduce the street side setback from 20 feet to 5 feet 4 inches. The Hubbard Development Code includes criteria for how the Planning Commission considers variances. In this case, the applicant is stating that other homes in this district enjoy a similar setback for some of their historic structures, and that he's simply trying to recoup the structure that was there previously. So the variance criteria I've included there in the staff report. At the bottom of page 6, there's a couple important criteria to look at, and those are that the variance would not create a significant adverse impact on the appearance, function, or safety of the subject property, and that it also wouldn't impose limitations on other properties in the area. So the reason we have a 20-foot setback is there are a couple different reasons. One is to ensure that houses in Hubbard provide sufficient off-street parking. So typically that minimum of 2 parking spaces is met by a garage and a driveway. And we want to make sure that when a car parks in the driveway, they're completely off of the public sidewalk, so they're not blocking the sidewalk. In this case, this house has an existing driveway that can provide that off-street parking. So we're not looking for that parking to be met by this shortened driveway. So that's not a concern. In this case, in order to access the proposed garage, the applicant will need to pour that driveway apron so that a vehicle can access the public street that's paved there on C Street. And so that driveway apron would look just like his other driveway apron. And so that would actually bring this off-street parking space into conformance here by providing that driveway apron that's currently missing. Currently, the vehicle drives over the grass shoulder of the right-of-way there. When this public hearing was noticed, neighbors within 100 feet of the subject property received a notice in the mail and they had an opportunity to comment. The city did not receive any comments or concerns from neighbors about the proposal. And then the last section of criteria is about non-conforming uses. Just as a reminder, non-conforming uses and structures are in place before a certain code or ordinance is adopted. And while the city encourages them to come into compliance eventually, they are grandfathered in or allowed to remain. If someone wants to change the non-conforming use or structure, there's certain criteria you have to consider. Sometimes those changes occur because a structure burns down and someone wants to rebuild it, or they have to comply with certain laws. In this case, there are criteria that need to be met in section B, and this is at the top of page 8. There's a couple questions here. The first one is, does the alteration result in a reduction of the non-conformity of the use? Well, the existing pad is in place. They're not proposing to bring that pad or those walls any closer to the right-of-way, so those are existing. They would be improving the non-conformity by paving the driveway because currently cars drive over the grass shoulder of the road. So in that regard, you could argue that they're improving the non-conformity there or reducing the non-conformity. The second question is about, would they have no greater impact on the neighborhood? Looking at aerial photos, it appears that there is or was a temporary structure there, like a temporary carport. It can be argued that building that permanent structure would be an improvement over that temporary structure. The next question is about the use or occupancy of the structure has not been discontinued for a period of 1 year or more. And, this can be discussed all night long, but the fact is that there's a concrete pad and half walls in place, and those haven't moved. And the property owners have continued to park there with or without a roof. So in this regard, it has continued to be a parking space before and after that roof was removed. And then finally, the non-conforming use and any subsequent use of the property and structure conforms to all other codes and regulations. This structure does require that they get a building or structural permit from Marion County Building Department. And it will require a public works permit to perform that driveway apron in the public right-of-way. So on page 9, our staff's recommendations that the Planning Commission can find that this historic setback can be approved. So this major variance can be approved subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And included in those conditions, pretty standard language here, building permits, utilities are subject to the Public Works construction and design standards. Work within the C Street right-of-way requires Public Works permitting prior to construction. And that driveway needs to be constructed there, subject to the Public Works standards. There's also a recommended condition in there about parking, that the applicant shall not park vehicles in front of the garage, blocking the public sidewalk. And that applies to all properties in Hubbard, but it's important to point out here because that directly relates to the variance that's being requested. And there's also a condition in there about lighting. So no other concerns here. On page 10, there is a recommended motion to approve, and that's in a box there for the Planning Commission. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Holly. Are there any questions of staff from the Planning Commission before we continue and accept public testimony? Okay. Now I will accept public testimony regarding this case. Would the applicant like to, or the representative like to speak?
I can if you want me to. I'm here more to witness the approval, so. I'm not worried. It sounds, I'm not worried about it.
Proponents, is there anyone who would like to speak in support of the application?
Good evening, Planning Commission, Matt Kennedy, reside at 3635 Fifth Street, 2 doors down neighbor, Lance Lizette. And I grew up on 4th Street, what is currently known as 377 4th Street as a child, and I used to walk through this garage as a kid to get into that house. And I think staff has noted that it is a historic garage. What quite frankly kind of troubled me is that he's had to come down and go for a variance to put a roof back on the existing building. He's not asking to build anything. He's not asking to create any different setback. This has been there at least since the 1970s with my foot traffic. And I'm in favor of him doing the project and putting a roof back on that. I don't recall exactly what point it was taken off, but and if he's happy to do the improvements, there's no problem there. But this is an existing garage with 3 or 4 foot walls on it, and he wants to put a roof back on it, and he has to come spend the money and time and ask for your blessing to do it. So I would hope that you'll be able to prove that. This will be a big improvement for the neighborhood, have a long missing roof on an existing structure. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. Anyone else in support? Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Is there anyone that would like to speak neither for nor against the application, or neutral? Would the applicant like to address any of the testimonies? Does the Planning Commission have any clarifying questions for the applicant?
I just want to make sure drainage on this slopes away from the building and from the thing. If you have an apron, you're not going to get the grade does not go into into your house by adding these things, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Before I close or continue the public hearing, are there any additional questions from the Planning Commission or staff or anyone? As a reminder, once I close the hearing, only commissioners and staff may speak. Okay, hearing none, Public testimony is now over. I will close the public hearing at 6:56 PM. We'll now entertain discussion on the application and or a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion for approval. Mr. Barron, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Okay, it's passed. And I believe that's the end of our agenda, right?
I have one housekeeping question. Minutes for our previous meeting.
I haven't got it.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know if the minutes for continuance were different. Okay.
They're,
And I'm not calling you out, I just.
they're going to take a while for that.
I'm not trying to tell you, I didn't know if those minutes don't show up until the end.
We'll get there. When they're ready, they show up.
Yeah.
So
I would go to adjourn.
we have a motion for adjournment in second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And for the planning commission, you do have a public hearing scheduled for next month.
Yes.
Friday.
Is that Thanksgiving week?
No.
No.
We have,
Week before.
Good call.
It's the week before.
That's right, 'cause Thanksgiving late. Yeah.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Hopefully, like.
I don't know.
Short and sweet. Yep.
I mean,